Hey Buckeye fans, what's going on? Here's your Columbus Wired Quick Hit pregame preview. I'm Andy Evans, and as always, I appreciate you guys coming along for the ride. And here we are, live at Ohio Stadium for game number 3 of the 2022 season, featuring the third-ranked Buckeyes hosting the Toledo Rockets out of the MAC Conference. Now, this is only the 4th time that these two schools have ever met. First time, right here in the shoe, 1998. Second time, a neutral game. And I say neutral because it was at Cleveland Browns Stadium in 2009. Both of those times, Buckeyes pitching shutouts against the Rockets. First game in 1998 was a 49-0 blowout. Second game in 2009 in Cleveland Browns Stadium was 38-0. Third time they met, 2 years later after 2009, in 2011, right back here. Of course, we all remember that was the Luke Fickell season. The Buckeyes were, right? They ended up going 6-7 that season. Well, they got a test from the Rockets that year. In fact, 4th and 5 on the Ohio State 16, Toledo threatening to possibly win the game, and the Buckeyes stoned them for the 27-22 victory. And that's been the last time that these two teams have ever met. So, what do we know, though, about this year's Rockets? Well, they're 2-0 so far. In fact, this is the best start. I know it's early in the season, but this is honestly the best start that Toledo has had since the 2015, 16, and 17 seasons, where they went at least 3-0 in 2016 and 17, and in fact, they went 7-0 in 2015. Now, the Rockets, 9-19 all-time versus top 25 teams, and in fact, they've only won 2 true road games against top 25 opponents in their entire history. 4 if you want to include the 2 bowl wins that they had, which were against number 20 San Jose State in the 1981 California Bowl, as well as against number 24 Temple in the 2015 Boca Raton Bowl. And in fact, in that 2015 season where they started off 7-0, their first game was on the road against number 18 Arkansas, and they won that one to have a pretty darn good season in 2015. So 2-0 so far to start the year. Rockets off to a good start, like I said. And so far they've outscored their opponents 92-10. That's not a misprint, folks. Toledo has outscored their first 2 opponents 92-10. Having said that, before we get too crazy about those stats, let's also take into account that their first 2 games were against FCS Long Island, which they pitched a shutout, and last week's game against FBS independent UMass. UMass was also predicted by Athlon Sports, pretty reputable sports magazine if you ask me. Athlon Sports had them ranked dead last. Before the season began, UMass had them ranked as dead last out of all 131 FBS opponents. So there's your 2 wins so far for Toledo. An FCS team and a team predicted by Athlon Sports to be the absolute worst in all of FBS. Hence probably why they're off to a 2-0 start and have outscored both of those teams 92-10. So, what do we know, though, about Toledo as far as who they're bringing in on the field to square up against a couple of good, should I say, against a good Ohio State offense and a pretty much improved Ohio State defense? Well, they've got 4th-year quarterback DeQuan Finn, who was the state of Michigan's Mr. Football as a senior in 2018. He's a mobile guy. He finished 4th last year in the MAC, though, in passing efficiency with over 2,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, only threw 2 interceptions all of last season. And on the ground, he finished 2nd on the team with 509 yards and 9 touchdowns. So a guy that could not only run when he needs to, he can scramble out of the pocket, he can create plays with his legs, mobile guy, can throw on the run, somebody that this Buckeye defense, more importantly, this 3 safety look, as well as guys like Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers there, your linebackers in the middle, are going to have to keep an eye on, because this guy is dangerous with his legs. So far, in the first 2 games this season, Finn, not too bad throwing the football. Probably a little low of a completion percentage. 61% of his passes complete. 388 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he has already thrown a pick. So after only throwing 2 last year in the first 2 games against FCS Long Island and one of the worst, if not the worst, football teams in all of FBS UMass, he's already thrown an interception. Something that the Buckeyes could possibly be looking forward to because they have yet to force a turnover. That is not something, though, that the guys and Jim Knowles said during this week before the game in some of their after practice interview sessions that they were concerned about. Lathan Ransom, a guy who's really come on at safety here. In fact, he's second on the team right now in tackles for the Buckeyes. Something that Lathan Ransom said, hey, look, you know what, we're fine, we're okay, and I don't think Jim Knowles is really all that concerned, especially seeing as how they're only 2 games into Jim Knowles' new defense, which we all know is a very complicated defense to get to learn. So they said those will come, but could this be the game where the Ohio State defense finally breaks out, gets themselves a turnover? I guess we're going to find out. So also in the mix right now, as far as your defensive guys are concerned, Mike Hall Jr. suffered a little bit of an injury last weekend against Arkansas State. Coach Day said, don't worry about Mike Hall Jr. He's going to be fine. He did not suffer a significant enough injury for them to be concerned about in holding him out this game. However, we're going to find out if he's going to get in or not. I would like to think that Mike Hall Jr. is going to play today, maybe as a precautionary measure, because I'm sure the Buckeyes are pretty confident they're going to walk away with a win tonight. They may hold him out. So Mike Hall Jr., Ryan Day said he expects him to play, but we shall see. So, having said all of that, there's one guy defensively for Toledo, or should I say there's one guy that was on Toledo's offense last year that Ohio State's defense does not have to be concerned about, and that's former running back Bryant Kobach, who finished first team MAC last year after gaining 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns. He's not going to be playing tonight. He's gone. He's out of here. He's on to the next step in his life. But what they are probably going to have to look out for is a 4-headed attack at running back featuring Jaquez Stewart, Micah Kelly, Willie Shaw, and Maryland Terrapin transfer Penny Boone. All 4 of those guys so far have combined for 274 of the team's 460 total rushing yards and half of their 8 rushing touchdowns. Micah Kelly and Jaquez Stewart are listed on the 2 deep in the depth chart, but we've seen Penny Boone get in and have some carries, as well as Willie Shaw. So there is a possibility you could see any one of those. You're going to see at least 1, maybe 2, if not possibly 3 or all 4 guys tonight running the ball for Toledo. It's going to be interesting to see who they throw in there. Now, speaking of transfers, remember last weekend how I was telling you guys about former Ohio State running back Brian Snead and how he made his return here to the Horseshoe in the other team's jersey? He plays for Arkansas State. Well, this is the 2nd week in a row now that a former Buckeye is returning back home, but in another team's jersey, and that is, of course, linebacker Dallas Gantt. You probably remember somewhat famously or infamously last year, in the middle of the season, he pieced out of Columbus and figured his time here was done and decided to enter the transfer portal. Well, he decided to transfer back home to Toledo, where he was a first-team All-Ohio, U.S. Army All-American, and 4-star recruit out of St. John's, why did that just escape me? St. John's Jesuit High School. I knew it would come to me, and also because I had it in my notes here. But Dallas Gantt, he's returning home, and he's making the most of his time in a Rockets uniform. He is now starting for the Rockets. He is leading the team in tackles with 20. In fact, he's got like a 7-tackle edge on the next guy on the defense with 13. And he was asked earlier in the week, though, if he essentially what his time at Ohio State meant. And he threw props to Ryan Day and Ohio State and said that he wouldn't be the person that he is today had he not come down here and spent 4 years in an Ohio State uniform. When asked about Dallas Gantt, the time he spent here, Ryan Day threw props back his way and said that he was an outstanding person, comes from a great family, and he's really happy, truly happy that Dallas Gantt has found himself a home and has found some success in a Toledo Rockets uniform. So Dallas going to go up against old foes, teammates, not old foes, but old teammates, and now will be current foes, and try and stop guys like C.J. Stroud, Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, so on and so forth, right? Henderson and Williams right now, a two-headed monster in the backfield for the Buckeyes. 308 of the team's 340 rushing yards, all 3 of their rushing touchdowns. Henderson right now leading the team with 25 carries, 178 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Williams has 22 carries, 130 yards, and that one game-sealing score right here against Notre Dame 2 weekends ago. So C.J. Stroud, I know some people out there, his numbers probably look a little low, especially against Notre Dame. 223 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions for some people was a little low, maybe not even good enough. But right now, all I can say is that the dude has thrown 69% of his passes complete for 574 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, has taken a couple of sacks. But otherwise, I would gamble to say that C.J. Stroud is still off and running to have a pretty good season. And against this Toledo defense, he might be able to do it, who I don't think are battle tested. They haven't seen the kind of athleticism that they're going to see tonight on the offensive side of the football, because Ohio State is probably planning on throwing and throwing often. Now, having said that, who's C.J. Stroud going to throw to? I mean, he's going to have his pick of the litter, right? We saw what Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka did last weekend, going crazy, each of them having 100-yard games. In fact, Harrison, 7 catches, 184 yards, 3 touchdowns, became only the second player in Ohio State history to have at least 2 games with 3 touchdown catches or more, a feat only accomplished previously by Joey Galloway. Pretty good company to be in if you're Marvin Harrison, and there's a lot of time left for him to become the only Ohio State Buckeye to have at least 3 games with 3 touchdowns or more. Emeka Egbuka also a great game, 4 catches. He had, 118 yards, and then that 51-yard touchdown catch, and he caught up the middle and just raced untouched towards the end zone. Also had a 78-yard punt return that was negated by a silly penalty where Taraja Mitchell jumped over the line of scrimmage. It's not allowed on punts and kicks. So hopefully that doesn't happen again, because otherwise Emeka would have had himself 2 touchdowns last weekend, but instead, because of the penalty, that erased the 78-yard punt return for the touchdown, and ultimately it led to Arkansas State's first of 4 field goals for the game. So, penalties. This is probably the one thing really to look out for tonight, because Ohio State not doing so well in the penalty department. 16 penalties in 2 games so far this season. That ranks as 87th in the country, 160 penalty yards, which is 107th in the nation. Ryan Day said, obviously, it's absolutely unacceptable. So, are they going to improve in that department tonight? Ryan Day said it obviously comes down to them, the coaches, really getting on these guys, really getting on them to make sure that their techniques, everything that they do on the field is solid to the point where, they're going to have some penalties, Ryan Day said, but not an average of 8 a game. For what is that, 160 divided by 2, that's 80. I mean, that's just, that's insane. 8 for 80 yards they're averaging right now in 2 games. So we're going to find out if Ryan Day and the rest of the coaching staff got on these guys and they limit some penalties. Because if they let penalties hinder them, they may not cover the 31-point spread that they're favored by. They have not covered the spread in the previous 2 games. Arkansas State favored by 44.5. They won by 33. They were favored by 17.5 over Notre Dame. They won by 11. Tonight, favored by 31. I think they come this close. But I'm not going to give them the 31-point win. I still think that Ohio State needs, they still got a few things that they need to work on. They're getting there. This is a great football team. Don't get me wrong, folks, but I think they just have a few more things to work on before we really start seeing some dominant performances. And I know you're probably thinking, if they're not dominating now, wait until they get into the Big Ten, because the domination is not going to happen. But I think this is a team that is still building, still getting to that point where they truly feel comfortable. And when you don't have guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, who was your most prolific receiver last year, that kind of takes a little bit away from the offense. To which Ryan Day said, as I'm sure everybody out there has heard, he expects JSN and Julian Fleming to be back for tonight's game. It's going to be interesting to see, though, in what capacity does he bring them back? Does he put them on the field right away and see how they do? And then if they build a big enough lead, obviously pull them out and let some of the second teamers have their time? Or is he maybe going to, slowly, gently kind of ease him in and see how he progresses throughout the game? It's probably going to be the former rather than the latter. And let's hope that today C.J. Stroud has his pick of the litter to throw to, and the Buckeyes end up with a big win, and I'm wrong that they don't cover. Now, my final synopsis, or should I say my final score, because I always like to throw out a prediction. 31-point favorite. They allowed 12 points against Arkansas State, 10 against Notre Dame. I'm going to go with another 10 points here for Toledo, and I think Ohio State scores 39, just because I said they wouldn't pick. They wouldn't cover the 31-point spread. So there you have it. 39-10, Ohio State wins. And one more thing before I go, special shout out to my man Benjamin Dressel, whom I was told today that he has a class where they are allowed to pick nicknames in their class, and for some reason he decided to go with Andy. So big ups to my man Benjamin Dressel. He's a big Buckeye fan, as well as the rest of the Dressel family. Mike, Sarah, Caroline, Charlotte, Noah, and Leo. Much love, much props, you guys. And obviously, props to everybody else out there watching. Appreciate the love. So until the post-game wrap-up, folks, everybody take care, and I'll talk to you then.